Hello, people! So, my couch came, and I'm going to get it. Pretty excited about it. Not exactly sure if we're going to be able to fit it all, but I've got a bunch of ratchet straps, and I've got a buddy with a truck. So, one of the downsides to a minivan, I suppose. But yeah. So anyway, so we're gonna go grab that truck, or grab that that couch, and then I'm gonna get a sound bar, and then I will stop buying things for my theater because it's getting a little ridiculous. I did want to talk about debt a little bit. I think I mentioned this the other day, but one thing is I'm feeling slightly self-conscious that I've been talking about all of these things that I'm purchasing, and I don't want to give people the impression, one, that I'm making tons of money, or two, that I'm spending irrationally. And so if this 100 days was the only experience that you had with me, you'd probably have a very low opinion of my ability to budget and finance. And so just wanted to talk a little bit about kind of some of the sacrifices that we've made to be able to get to this point. I think it was Will Terry. I was watching Will Terry's YouTube channel the other day, which if you haven't, you should go do that because it's awesome. That guy has become one of my favorite voices in illustration. He's amazing. Anyway, there's a dude with a couch in his truck right there. So, anyway, what I was saying is I have not had a car payment since 2008, 2009, somewhere around there. A long time ago, I got into debt because I was stupid and I didn't really understand the downside of that. I wanted what I wanted, and I wanted it right now. And it took me years to dig out, and it sucked really bad. I'll give you some real numbers here so that you kind of know what we're talking about. I started a business. I went roughly $12,000, $12,500 into debt for that business, and had I been using cash, I probably would have spent $2,000 or $3,000, and that makes me sound like a moron, but I was acting like a moron. So yeah. Anyway, here's the deal, right? I was starting a business. I was doing this video thing at the time, and it was a great idea, good business. I like the concept of it, but I felt this need to posture, this need to pose as if I was bigger than I was. And so I bought a lot of equipment, and I bought a lot of equipment that I probably could have built up to. I could have grown my business to the size that required that amount of equipment. But instead, I wanted to show up to shoots, and I wanted to look totally tricked out. And so I bought a ton of really nice stuff, which in video and sound, $12,000 doesn't go that far. But anyway, as somebody who hadn't made a dime in that business yet, I had no business spending that amount of money. One, because I didn't have it, and two, because I didn't need it. I could have gotten very decent products done for $2,000 or $3,000. And so I had this debt, and piled that on top of the student loans that I didn't pay off when I could have, and a stupid car purchase that I made. I was $34,000 in the hole, making $35,000 a year. And that is the situation that I was in when I got married. And so it took us a couple years to dig out. We actually got out really fast, making about $35,000. We paid off our debt in a little over 2 years, about 2.5 years. I think it was maybe not 2.5. I think it was about 26 months once we buckled down and started. And a lot of that was I sold everything that wasn't nailed down. I felt super sad. Like, I remember mourning the loss of this equipment. It was a dream that I had that I decided to give up, at least for the time being, by selling that equipment. But it was more important to me at the time to be financially solvent than it was to pretend to be bigger than I was as far as my business acumen and ability. And so that is kind of the downside to this story, right? And so I bought a car for a couple $100. This is back when you could buy a car for a couple $100. And it was garbage. It was a piece of junk. I mean, literally at one point in time, I took a hacksaw and I cut out a large section of my muffler and replaced it with this kind of high intensity heat hose that I think is really meant for like dryers and things, because I just didn't want a car payment. And so I drove this thing, and it was embarrassing. It's an embarrassing vehicle. It was really nasty, but it was paid for and I owned it. And at the end of that, I think I paid about $250 for that. At the end of that, when it was completely done, I drove that for a couple years, about 2 years, I think. When it was completely over and done, and like there was no reason trying to fix it or do anything else to it, I scrapped it for a profit. So I was actually able to have somebody come to my house and take it for the steel and the parts and everything, and they gave me $300. So I made $50 on that car, and I had a vehicle for 2 years, no payment. Now, many of you are saying, "Oh, that's not worth it," and da 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 da. And let me tell you this: I've never had a car payment since then, and now I'm driving this minivan, and it is not a nice minivan. It's not a Cadillac or a Honda or anything. It's a used Chevy, and it's not pretty, but it is paid for and we own it. And I paid a little bit more for this. I think I paid about $3,500, but I was able to pay in cash. And the reason I brought up Will Terry is I think he was the one. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos lately, but I think he was the one that was showing off his used and paid for vehicles in his garage. And he used this term that I think is really important, talking about delaying gratification, right? And so my wife and I have lived in other people's basements that we've rented from them. We've lived in apartments. We've been married, and I've had a career since 2004. We haven't been married since 2004, but I've had a career since 2004. And we bought a house in Idaho Falls, and then lived there for a couple years, and it sucked. And it wasn't a great house either. We spent $114,000 on that house. I have since learned that you shouldn't cheap out on houses. But not cheaping out on them doesn't mean that you should get a ridiculously expensive house that's way more than you need. But you can still get a house that isn't falling apart and 400 years old and whatever, right? But you can't do that right away. And so now, fast forward a number of years, we've been saving. I'm making more money now. I've spent a lot of time and effort into increasing my skills and abilities so that I can get paid more and do bigger and better jobs. And I'm now working as a teacher at a university, which I love, and also allows me the mental ability to freelance on the side. And they encourage that because they want me to stay industry relevant. And so it's great. And so I do freelance, and I do my own projects, and I like it a lot. So anyway, long story short, fast forward a number of years, we've got a little bit of savings. We've never really been able to like pack away huge amounts of money. But ever since we've decided to get out of debt, we have stayed out of debt, except for one time. And we had to go in debt to get my master's. It was a really tough call, because I've been preaching this get out of debt, stay out of debt mantra to all my friends and family for so long that I felt like a hypocrite having to go into debt for my master's. Now, there is a very specific set of circumstances that made that okay. One was we were paying $600 a month to rent this small place, and that allowed us to cash flow quite a bit of the masters. Two was I was given kind of a specific time frame to be able to continue to work at this university. They don't want people with a bachelor's teaching other people who are getting a bachelor's, right? You got to have a master's, an MFA, a PhD, an MBA, something along those lines, which makes sense, right? But I had this kind of tight time frame, and so in any case, I worked real hard, got a scholarship, a 50% scholarship, and we scrimped and saved and cash flowed as much as we possibly could. And I came out of that master's with about $10,000 in student loans. And it felt horrible. I was like, it was terrible. I couldn't do anything anymore again. And I had a plan. I got out my spreadsheet and I said, okay, how quickly can I get out from under this hole? And I figured out that I could do it in 4 to 6 months if nothing went wrong. And so we put everything we had into it. Again, we stopped going out to eat. We stopped doing fun things. We sacrificed, we delayed pleasure to be able to get out of debt. And having done that, we were able to pay off that $10,000 in about 8 months. Took us a couple more months because we had some issues with a car. And so we had to kind of shovel money into this thing. And so there's that. And then that allowed us to start saving. And so we started saving. We were able to put a little bit away and to get this house. And so now we have this house, and the whole time we had a renter in this other house, and up until the last couple months where she stopped paying rent, for a number of years she was paying our rent, and it was great. And so our house appreciated a little bit while she was renting it, and so we came off with a little chunk of money. Not a huge chunk of money, but enough to where we can buy furniture in cash. And so anyway, I just wanted to, one, explain that I'm not crazy and I'm not spending erratically, and two, to kind of, if you guys are in debt, it is worth it to get out, because you can buy stuff after that, and you don't begrudge that thing. I don't look at my projector or this couch or anything and think, oh man, that thing is costing me so much money. I pay X amount every month on that, and I'm paying 2 or 3 times what it's worth by the time I pay it off. I hate that thing. And I tell you what, I did that with this car that I loved. I bought a Mini Cooper, and it cost me hundreds of dollars every month. And I started to begrudge the Mini Cooper. It sucked a lot. And that car was awesome, but I hated it after a little while because I was broke and I still had these payments, and it sucked. And now I can own things, not everything that I want. I can't just buy whatever I want whenever I want to. But if I'm willing to save up and pay cash for things, I get to enjoy them. And I also have a little bit of a reserve for emergencies. And I think that's huge. If you listen to John Acuff with Quitter, or Jake Parker, or a lot of these guys out there, they will be talking about how putting away a little bit of money is really important, because then you can take some time off and do a personal project, or if an emergency happens or you lose your job, it's not the end of the world, right? And so anyway, there's my little financial rant while I get these couches.